friends.
Yeah. So, let's start at the beginning. I'm Jon. Jon Weil. I'm a sound engineer. That's what I do for a living. I'm actually a mastering engineer. So what I do for my bread and butter is I sit in the studio and I do the final stage of processing and preparation for music before it goes out into the world. But I've also worked in live sound. I've worked in studios. I live, eat, breathe, and sleep sound. I make gadgets, so I know a lot about this stuff, but I also feel like I'm in a unique position because I am a musician who every day, including this week, kind of like a lot of you, is going out to smaller venues and getting frustrated or amazed, hopefully, by live sound, and I still feel like, why does this not go better? But after feeling this way so many times, I thought I'm in a nice, unique position where if anyone's willing to listen, I'd love to explain some of these things that keep happening over and over and over, and sometimes you can't really do anything about it, and also explaining like what I would do about it, and also the thing I'm most excited about is just kind of answering everyone's questions. I was going to bust through, or kind of go through some vocabulary first, just to, like, some of you may know all this stuff and some of you may not, but I just want to kind of make sure we're all on the same page so I don't start throwing words out that you haven't heard yet, or like maybe your question is what that word means. It wouldn't make sense that the whole time I keep saying this word over and over. Does that sound good? If anyone wants to go, I won't be afraid. Man, I thought this was like political. This isn't the Seahawks game, right? Yeah, just paintings on the wall. Creep. So I guess the best place to start is with some terms. I've got some show and tell. Let's just kind of dig in. A PA system. What is a PA system? Well, a PA system is like all of this stuff. Without going deep in the definition of what makes it a PA system, it's a public address system. That's kind of what it's short for. It is the entirety of everything. So the thing I kind of want to put out there is when someone says the PA, if I'm a sound person and I'm hearing them, I assume they mean the whole thing. Because I've heard it on both ends. I've even said it from like the PA, and they're talking about like one speaker. Does that make sense to everyone? Why I would kind of want to throw that out there? I mean, PA systems can look like this. They can be totally hidden. Like some of the best PA systems, you don't even see them. Oh, sorry. Sometimes they're huge, and they're not all the same thing. That's something I want to put out there is any assumption that every PA is the same thing, and they all have that thing that the other PA had. That's also something I kind of wanted to dispel right off the bat. It's called public address system, used for sound reinforcement, varies widely. So. Another big one is instrument cable. A lot of you may know what this is, but there's plenty of people I know that are on stage, they're nervous, and they just want to do what the sound person wants them to do, and the person says, do you need an instrument cable? Instrument cable, 1/4-inch jack, and they're just like, you broke me, and it could ruin their night. I mean, that could be like, I feel dumb now, and then the sound person maybe gets mad, they're like, fine, then we have to put a mic on you, and this person's like, I have no idea what's happening right now. So what they're talking about is an instrument cable, or a 1/4-inch cable, and that's referring to the diameter here of the jack on both ends. It's used for instruments. You know, this is what would plug into your guitar, keyboard sometimes. A microphone typically isn't, this doesn't go into a microphone. So without getting too into it, I just kind of wanted to point that out, because I'm going to say that a bunch of times. Instrument cable, 1/4-inch. There's one, I'm losing my stuff. And there's another one, different color, different, all that stuff, still an instrument cable. 1/4-inch, kind of the same thing. That's also confusing. They're not two different things. When people throw those terms at you when you're on stage, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about probably what you're plugging your guitar into, keyboard, etc. Kind of the opposite is an XLR cable, or a microphone cable. Kind of also interchangeable terms. People will call them both and mean the same things quite often. You'll notice that this doesn't have a point here. It kind of has two different ends that go together when it's working. Yeah. And there's 3 pins. And I won't go in depth on all that, although I could. But this is typically for microphones, and this is not going to plug into your guitar typically. Of course, there's an exception to everything I'm saying, but I'm really trying to just not confuse people. So XLR, microphone cable, when people say XLR jack, they're talking about something that can receive this. There's a bunch on the back of here. I'll be pointing them out as we go. Just wanted to differentiate that they're different. Okay, DI box. This is something people, I think, throw around all the time. They think everyone knows what this means. What a DI box does, without going super in depth, is it's typically a box that allows you to plug an instrument cable. So say this is coming from your guitar keyboard. It goes into one end, and then on the other end, the XLR comes out the other end. Now, why does this exist? How do I keep this short?
Noise.
Go ahead.
Noise.
Noise is one of them, but in an even simpler way, it's because a lot of times there isn't a connection for the guitar. Like in the simplest way, your board may not have, it may just have a bunch of microphone inputs. And in order to plug a guitar or an instrument into it, you need something to convert one to the other. Think of it as like a fancy adapter, but that's a DI box. Yes?
Is the DI box just a converter between, say, a guitar cable and the XLR cable? Or is there any magic happening in that box?
There is a little magic happening. That's a great question. It's not just like a connector where it's connecting everything to just fit together. There's actually something, normally a transformer in here, and it's actually changing the electrical behavior. Like David was saying, it does some magic to allow the noise to be lower, to allow the guitar to plug into the mixing board, and everything to be happy. Because, I don't know if you've had this experience, but sometimes just because a plug fits in there on a mixing board, doesn't mean that's where it goes or that you're using it right. I'm not trying to make it more confusing, but what,
Yeah. So I have a cable at home, which has an XLR jack on one end and a 1/4 inch on the other end.
Yep.
I don't know why someone would make this or where I got it, but
Like this
why
one?
should I not use this?
So this is kind of that gray area where I don't want to lose too much time. But this is a microphone cable with an XLR jack on one end and a 1/4 inch jack. I know it's already confusing because this is a 1/4 inch and this is microphone. Back in the day, before XLR cables existed, this was every microphone cable. And a DI was like, what's a DI? Like no one had an electric instrument anyway. So unfortunately, this is kind of one of those things that, and this drives me crazy too, because a lot of times I'll look at someone's setup and they've got this plugging into that, and I gotta just rip it all out and start somewhere. But this stuff does make a difference, and that's a great question. Some of this stuff I'd have to kind of like see exactly your rig, and I could totally walk you through what's going on. But yeah, the main thing is that when I say instrument or 1/4 inch, I'm kind of talking about sort of an end like that, XLR, end like that. DI box allows one kind of instrument to go into microphone.
Can you share briefly what magic is missing?
And it does something where it just switches the impedance. So the guitar is now kind of ready to feed a mixer. You put a transformer in there and you have a higher ratio on one end and then it works. But
so it makes it more compatible with the mixing board.
exactly. That's a good way to put it.
I've seen a little 1/4 inch impedance converter that you can go on the end, and you don't happen to have one, but I use it at home for a microphone.
Yeah. Chris?
Does the DI also help with cable length? With issues of cable length? That's something that the internet told me that.
Well, if you're going hundreds of feet, it makes more sense to, instead of running a 100-foot guitar cable, which is very susceptible to radio noise and hiss and buzz, it would make sense to go into a DI box, because then running it like through an XLR at what they call mic level does allow it to run for hundreds of feet. But that's assuming you have a mixing board on the other end that can plug the XLR. But I feel like if you're talking about just 10 feet across the stage, your guitar cable is fine. I wouldn't add more stuff. Travis?
When you talk about plugging in a guitar, are you talking about electric or acoustic? It doesn't matter which?
Well, with an electric guitar, a lot of people would be plugging into a guitar amplifier.
Right.
But an acoustic guitar that has a pickup in it is an electric guitar. So you could plug either one in,
Okay.
or a keyboard, or like a cigar box guitar.
So I guess what I'm getting, part of the question feeds into when do we need one?
A DI box?
Yeah.
In the simplest, when you want to plug your guitar into a mixing board or PA, and you don't have, and it doesn't have a little 1/4" jack that says guitar or DI, they're all a little different. But yeah, that's a great question. Is you need one because you literally physically can't plug the guitar.
Okay.
That'd be the best, quickest answer.
And a real quick question, a lot of times people have those little clips that fit into their sound hole on the guitar, and they don't have much signal going into the board, it seems to me. Is that because they don't have a preamp in them?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And they all vary. That's something I'll kind of get to too. Is kind of like PA systems. Guitar, electric guitars, acoustic guitars are not created equal. There's no law or regulation. They're so. Don't even get me started on it. So yeah, I know it's going to come up and up again. I got more on that, but I'm going to move past the DI just for a second. Mains. When you're on stage as a performer and someone says the mains or the front of the house, these are terms that a lot of people just throw at you, and most people don't really understand what it means. In a PA system, the mains are the speakers for the audience. That's the simplest way of putting it. They might be huge, they might be one of them, it might even be behind the performer, it might be in front of the performer, but the idea is the mains, or what I call the front of house speakers, are the ones pointing and intended for the audience. I'll get to this later. They're not always pointed at the audience. That's a problem. But they should be. If someone's saying the mains, the front of the house, they're not talking about when you're on stage, that speaker that's pointing up at you as a performer. I just want to get that out there. And that's the next term as a monitor, is some sort of speaker or even listening device that is typically on stage, and it's for the performer. Once again, it's not always on stage. The best setups I've seen, they're actually up on the ceiling off stage, really isolating the performers, but a lot of places can't afford that. So yeah, the monitors are for the performers. Yeah, performers. Front of the house, the mains are for the audience. Let's see. It's also worth pointing out, there's not always monitors. That's something that in the last few years after going from being a professional to actually like playing open mics, it's just like, what monitors? What's a monitor? Or they keep pointing at the main and say, yeah, the monitor's up. So that's just something I kind of want to put out there is like, if that's happened to you, you know what I mean. But monitor is for you, the musician. Mains or front of the house is for the audience. I'm going to come back to this stuff again, because this is stuff that is wrong so often. Also, sometimes what's coming through the monitor, just so you know, is the same thing. It's quite often a performer keeps yelling at the sound person, change what's in here, and it's unchangeable. Like, it's kind of, I know that sounds dumb, happens all the time. It's a budget thing, we'll get to that. Another term is bleed. When I'm saying bleed or leakage, what I'm talking about is if I'm singing into this microphone and I'm trying to have my voice come through the microphone into the PA, but there's a drum set next to me, and that drum sound is getting into this microphone, which it will, it's close enough. What people call that is bleed or leakage. So when I say that, don't think of like wartime movie. I mean, you can, but I'm talking about sound bleeding or leaking that shouldn't. And that's also a big live sound, as you can imagine. Let's see, feedback. We're going to talk a lot about this, but I just want to define it. This is how I define it. Oh, I've been not talking in the mic the whole time. Fired. Oh, I'm going to leave that off. So feedback is what I call this: a howling, shrieking, and or generally unpleasant sound caused by a speaker or a headphone. Could be that, any sort of speaker device feeding back, is what they call it, into the microphone or anything else that picks up sound, and then that sound is now being re-amplified by the speaker back in, which this is happening all the time. Like me turning this mic on right now, a little bit of that is leaking in and feeding back. But as soon as the volume levels get really high, or as soon as I get this microphone really close to that speaker, it'll start feeding back. But I mostly just wanted to define what it is. It's not the audience saying, "You suck!" I guess that is feedback, but it's anything from, "Ooh," yeah, that is negative feedback, to, "Wee," or just that unpleasant, shrieky, howling thing. A mixing board. This is a mixing board. This is also a mixing board. A mixing board, by definition, is what connects and controls the whole PA system. So it's not just controlling everything. I think most people get that this is doing something with the sound, but it's also connecting. And that's kind of important to point out, is everything goes through here. And it controls the PA. It typically has faders. These are faders, these slidey cool things. I love those. And knobs. Oh, I love knobs too. They're great. So yeah, but it's also worth pointing out this is also a mixing board. This doesn't have these slidey faders. It has knobs. Some of you might be like, duh, but to some people they're like, wow, that, I didn't know that. So it's kind of like, it's worth pointing out before someone says, turn the fader up, and you're looking at this going,
There isn't any.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Because this is the stuff I just see every day, and I'm just like, oh God, I need to have a class on it. Let's see. Another thing worth pointing out, this is kind of a new thing, is a lot of places there's no physical mixing. They'll have like a black box and an iPad. It's amazing. What's really cool, I mean, they can walk around the room and tweak it out, and there's all sorts of stuff they can do with that. I don't even really do live sound these days. When they first came out, I thought, I would not trust that. I wouldn't want to be like, hey, the band's saying more vocals, then the PA explodes because Windows is updated or something. But apparently from all the guys and gals that I know that do it, they're like, you're so old, man. It's fine, you know. But that's also just worth noting, is sometimes you walk into a venue where there's a mixing board. It might be on an iPad at someone's house. Pretty cool, right? Let's see. So a little bit more technical, channel. So if someone says, what channel am I plugged in? What channel are you plugged in? Hey, patch me into channel 3, Scotty, or whatever. What they're talking about is typically on a mixing board. I know this looks super complicated, but it's really, each one of these lines is what they call a channel. So it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the same thing over and over and over. So if you understand what one of these does, you understand what all this does. And the purpose of a channel, each channel has one of these, is in a proper setup, each instrument or vocal mic is on its own channel. So if someone says, I can't turn your channel up more, that's what they're talking about. It's not like a TV thing or a CB radio thing. Or if someone says, I can't do that, we're sharing channels. I can see how that would be so unclear to someone, but what they're saying is the microphone and the guitar are plugged into the same fader. If I turn your vocal up, your guitar is going to go. Does that make sense? Kind of throwing it out there to keep it simple. I could go deep into why and how, but for now, that's when I say channel, that's what a channel is. EQ. So this is short for or referring to equalization. And I think of that as the adjusting of various audio frequencies. I know that sounded like 7 other definitions that need to be thrown out. I'm talking about bass, treble. When I say bass, I mean the low notes on the bass guitar when the bass drum's hitting and you feel it in your chest. When I talk about treble or high frequencies, all this stuff, I'm talking about the opposite. These are like the S's on my voice. And what are some good examples of treble or high frequency? Anyone?
High end of a piano?
Cymbals, yeah. Violin has a good amount of high frequencies. Shakers, tons of high frequency, no low frequencies. Another one that I think a lot of sound people think everyone else understand is what mid-range is. This is what lives right between. And the way it sounds to me is if you take all of the mid-range out of a sound, it sounds very hollow. It sounds like, normally you couldn't say, like your average person would say, where's the mid-range? They'd say, that sounds hollow. I don't know what happened, I can hear the bass, I can hear all the treble, but it sounds hollow. And an even easier way to identify what mid-range sounds like is that telephone sound. If if you were to grab an equalizer and turn the mid-range all the way up, you're gonna hear kind of like a cardboardy, telephony sound where there's a lot of sound there, but there's not a lot of bass and there's not a lot of definition. So I just kind of wanted to throw those terms out there. If I later say mids or mid-range or treble, I don't want anyone just like, wow, I have no idea what that means. So moving on. I guess I already talked about a finger. That's the sliding part of a mixing board. The one thing I didn't mention is typically, you're gonna hear me say typically a lot, this, on a mixing board like this, if there's faders, it's pretty safe to assume that these are adjusting the front of the house, that this is typically adjusting what the audience hears. And hopefully this isn't thrown in front of you, go. But if by some chance that happened, yeah, these are probably not gonna adjust what the performer hears on stage. That's probably gonna adjust what's coming out for the audience. Another term I might throw out, I'm not gonna go too far into, something called phantom power. This one's hilarious, because if you don't know what to talk about, like you're thinking Star Wars or like something cool like that, what phantom power is it's power, like electrical power sent from a mixing board, typically to a microphone, or a DI box. Like this DI box needs phantom power from the mixing board to operate. And not every microphone needs it. Most microphones don't. But if someone says, hey man, or hey, does that need phantom? Like, I've seen people say that, and the other person's just like, yeah. And then they blow up their microphone because they just thought that was like a yes thing. But yeah, like you should be aware if your microphone needs phantom power. They also call this 48 volts. Sometimes people buy microphones, they might not realize that it needs that, and then realize that their mixing board doesn't have a phantom power button. And I won't get too in depth. If I throw that term out later, I don't want. Yes, Chris.
Some DIs also use phantom power as well, right?
Yeah, like this one. In order to have an even better functionality, it uses the power from. It's kind of smart because that's a new. Yes.
Just to repeat, so it's electrical power sent from the mixer to your microphone?
Yep.
Or any, okay.
Yeah, you know what, I kind of realized I didn't illustrate it. It's not like an extra wire. Just so you know, if your microphone's already plugged into your mixing board or interface or any of these other things that you can plug a microphone into, the power comes through from the mixing board to the microphone. It's kind of giving it more juice, I guess, is a way to think of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a weird concept, kind of. Travis?
Is it kind of like the difference between a passive pickup and an active pickup, where like
Yep.
the microphone, but rather than having batteries or a separate cable,
Nailed
it's that powers it? Okay.
Gives it juice, gives it more power, all that stuff.
Okay.
Christopher?
You mentioned DI box. Do other effects boxes or rigs also take phantom power, or is that typically no?
It's funny, yesterday I built a little kit that is a little box that takes the phantom power to give even more power to a microphone that doesn't need it. So there's all sorts of applications for it. They're probably going to come up with new ones. Like maybe pretty soon you could charge your iPad on phantom power. Like combine the best of all these worlds. Let's see, and then, okay, 3 more real quick ones. So gain, this is another one people talk about. What's your gain at? You know, not laundry detergent. And normally in the sound, what they're talking about is its volume. Think of gain as volume, like you're changing the volume. Gain going up is the volume going up. Gain going down is the volume going down. But it's always in reference to like a control or a knob on an electronic device. I would never say, if I'm just sitting in a room with a guitar not plugged in and strum it and say, wow, the gain is really low. If the volume was low, you know, and you wouldn't say it's not talking about the acoustic sound in a room. The gain is always referring to like turning up a knob, adding more volume via some equipment. That's another one I feel like people throw out, and it's like, not everyone knows that. Chris? Sorry.
Does gain have to do with the signal strength versus the actual volume? Like the end result I noticed with gain is the volume goes up, but it was my understanding that there's a reason it's a different word.
Yeah. Okay. So here's one. I'll try to answer that without going too far. Say on this mixer, you've got all these different things that control various volumes. If they all said gain, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. So on this one, I think this isn't even labeled, but you would call that level. any of these gains that are affecting how much go to a monitor. I'm not trying to lose you. Those would be called sends. They use it so that it's clear. You'd never see a piece of gear that says gain twice if they're meaning two different things. Another thing without going too far, typically on a mixing board, the gain is going to refer to the mic preamp, like the first, like the big gain that it sees. And now I feel like I'm about to go off from the simple land, but another thing I'll add about gain too is if you're looking at a guitar amp or you're talking about any situation where you're trying to create distortion, if there's a gain knob on it and then another one that says volume and level, the gain typically refers to distortion. I didn't mean to lose you, but that is a big thing. Is if like a lot of people would say that sounds too gainy. I kind of hate that. That already doesn't make sense. They wouldn't mean it sounds too loud. They're saying it sounds like it's starting to distort or something like that. And we'll get more into that relationship in a little bit. Does that kind of help? The next term was distortion. So distortion, which can be gain and volume can cause distortion. But distortion, I'm going to define that as any change to a sound. As soon as you change the volume of something, you equalize it, that is technically distortion. But almost no one ever means that when they say it. I'm guessing most of you know what I mean when someone says that's distorting or distorted. They're talking about like the guitar through the guitar amp or something like you're talking to a microphone too loud on your iPhone and now it sounds crunchy and all that. So when I use the term distortion over and over, possibly, that's what I'm talking about. It's just, and it normally happens because you're abusing something, or not purposely, but you've maybe got your gain too high, or your equalizer's too high, or you have the wrong amplifier, the wrong impedance is happening. Like, these things cause distortion, but before I say distortion over and over, I just want you to know that's what I'm talking about. And then finally, this is a big one, and I'm probably going to break this rule. In fact, please call me out. I hear this all the time. Hey, sound guy. They're not all guys. And it's kind of like, hey busboy. And it's funny, but honestly, there's a reason I don't do sound anymore. And a lot of it is, I take things personal. Little sensitive guy or whatever. People just treat the sound people like crap. In general, it's like sound guy, like that's not a good one. More like, hey, it sucks up here, and I'm not trying to make people sound bad, but I'm just trying to put it out there as like, when you talk to the sound person, they're not all sound guys. And I know that's kind of common sense stuff, but I just see it so much that I feel like I gotta say it. It's just like, and I'll kind of come back to this, as a musician, you're on stage, you're nervous, you're anxious, you're probably not acting like yourself, so sometimes, I know I have to remind myself of this stuff. Like, normally I wouldn't be an indecent person, but sometimes when I'm on stage tuning and the sound person, pisses me off, it's easy to kind of come back because I'm anxious. And so hopefully I can kind of help with you guys to deal with that. If you can, at the beginning of the show, learn the sound person's name. I know this sounds like such common sense stuff, but a lot of people don't do it. And if you learn their name, and you don't have to like kiss their butt or anything. Hey, my name is so-and-so, I'm in this band. What's your name? Cool, nice to meet you. Then when you're on stage, you can say, hey, Ralph, or hey, Sue. And it's just like a little bit more direct. When you just say, hey, now the whole room looks around. And it's awkward for everybody. So I just kind of wanted to point that out there as if you've gotten bad sound and the person is mad at you, it's probably not your fault, but it may be.
I have a quick addition to that. I'm a songwriter a long time, but I've only been learning to perform for the last few years. And every performance advice I have heard from professionals is the sound person is your most important person when you walk in there, and you should try and please them in any way and stay out of their way, and they will get you good sound, as good as they can produce. And always assume that and never get pissed off at it. Thank you.
Yeah. So, the first thing I want to talk about is gear and self-preparation. I think that you should know your individual weaknesses and plan for them. It sounds like common sense. Some people don't do it. Like Joy and I, we've got some weaknesses when we play, so we take a little grab bag of things that help us. Like where a guitar puts out too much bass, it makes the PA feedback. So we have a little pedal that cuts out the bass. Just little things. If this same problem happens every time, it's gonna keep happening. So, preparation's a big one. Here's some examples. If you got a really weak or shrill or loud voice. And you've been told this over and over again, plan for it. Maybe you bring your own microphone. I mean, I can't go through every example, but it's just this idea of seeing your weakness and constantly trying to make a kit or just have something so that you'll be ready for these problems and have no time. For a weak, shrill or loud voice, bring a mic. Or and you're gonna hear me say this over and over, just tell the sound person before you're on stage. If you let them know, hey, I don't have the best ears and I'm sorry about that, you don't have to apologize. Or I've been told I sing quiet, then you don't have that awkward dance where they're like, hey, are you ready? Hey, are you ready? And then you're just like, yeah, I guess it's fine. At least you kind of brought it up. You're not just bringing it up because that sound person too, they might be told to just go. Hurry up, there's 7 more acts to go. So communication, prep. For example, guitar bass. I kind of use Joy's guitar as an example. As if every time they say your guitar is just making the PA feedback because there's so much bass, and you don't want to get a new guitar, get a pedal, get a different pickup. Another example is, so for me, my guitar, I play really hard and I play really soft, and it drives sound guys crazy. So I bring a little pedal board with a compressor on, and that just allows me to even my sound levels out. And now that problem is gone. It only took me 2 years to think of that, and I should know this stuff. Anyways, let's see. And then same thing, say you are going to bring more gear too. A classic move is to bring all this and then forget it needs to plug in somewhere. So kind of just, once again, so much that sounds common, but see it every week is, oh, you have power for this, right? Or, oh, I didn't bring my power cable for it. So just the more stuff you bring, just be organized. So another one is if you're playing synthesizers, you have backing tracks, and this was brought up to me by Brandon. Try your best to make sure that as you're going between your different patches on your keyboard, try to make sure that their volume levels are even. As a sound person or even an audience member, there's nothing worse, well, there's always something worse, than someone being on stage, and as soon as they change to their other sound, now it's coming out of the PA. So if you're a synth player or you're someone that sings against backing tracks, to the best of your ability, just listen to them at home and just try to make sure you're not going to shock the sound person. Because as a sound person, just so you know, if you send them this incredible amount of level that they're not expected for, they may not be mad at you, but you are going to get turned down for the rest of the show. As a sound person, everyone's ears, you're responsible for everyone's ears. If that keyboard player keeps changing the sound on their keyboard and it lights the PA speakers on fire every time, they should turn. And some people just aren't really prepared for that. So try your best to do that. Once again, preparation, just having your together so that when things go wrong, you can handle those instead of the same old thing that's been happening. Another note I would say is that as you get more and more performers on stage, it just gets harder and harder and harder. And I see this on both ends, is when you have a drummer jumping up and another person singing, and let's throw another microphone up there and let's plug this person in. It's just really hard on the sound person. You need a lot more gear, and it's generally not going to make you sound better. So that's just something to be aware of, is when people are making up set lists for small venues and they're telling you, and then so-and-so is going to jump up for this song, then they're going to jump up. As a sound person, you're just well, then something else is going to go wrong if we have to keep changing. We only have 4 channels and 6 instruments. This is just something to be aware of as a performer. Another example, I bring these with me everywhere I go. Microphones. Next person. COVID. Put a cap on. You don't have to, but for me, I bring this because it allows me to get close to the mic. I'm also afraid of germs, so every time I get to the mic, I'd be doing this. As soon as I brought this, it made a big difference. I'm not telling you to do it, but it's just I don't see as much of this as I'd like to, and that's part of the being prepared thing. If your monitoring is always bad, you can bring in-ear monitors, which are little earbuds. But once again, a lot of venues, if you're playing small open mic night, are going to laugh at you if you say, "Can you plug this in for me?" Nope. But it exists, and I'm kind of talking about lower level performances here too. By now you probably assume I'm not talking about I'm not assuming anyone here is going to go play a Coliseum tomorrow. And in that case, probably gonna get a better sound system, but, okay.
Let's hope so, you're paying for it.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see, here's another tip, or here's like a tip that I found just for the preparation part. Have a song or a sound check ready. They won't always give you that chance, but instead of saying, hey, can I get your guitar? And then you softly strum it, know a riff that you're gonna play so that you can give that sound person a good representation of how you're gonna be playing. Or if they say, can I get a sound check song? It's a great idea for yourself or your band to have a song that is like, I want to say, it's like perfect for the sound person to be able to tune you in. Like if you're a band where one person sings in one song, another person sings in another, and you're switching instruments, try to find a song where everything's happening so the sound person can lock in that person's level, that person's vocal level. They know that there's a guitar, because this is one I see all the time. Halfway through the set, so-and-so's jumping up here. Oh, can I unplug and swap this mic? And it's just, I mean, it's not that it's undoable, but these are the things I see happen over and over that create these bad situations. Angry sound people. The room in the event. How do certain types of rooms and setups affect sound? What's a good room versus a bad room? There are good rooms and there are bad rooms. I've noticed huge rooms are very, very echoey, and that has all sorts of problems that it creates. Tiny rooms are very subdued and sound gets absorbed. So I wish I had a good answer on what makes a good room or a bad room, but just be aware that the room does affect. A lot of people will talk, oh, but I've got the best PA, I've got the best this, I've got the best that, and there's certain rooms, and I'm not going to badmouth any places where, and some of you know what I'm talking about, in some of these places where the PA is fine, everything's fine, but this room is unworking. You know, they're like trying to have an open mic here and shoot it to that guy, but don't interrupt these people with coffee. And because we don't have a monitor, we have a PA speaker that's right next to the microphone. And so like the room itself is a big deal. So just something to be aware of. You know, outdoors versus inside. I don't have enough time to go into that, but those are totally different. You're gonna sound way different outside than inside. And I guess be as ready as you can for that. Another thing to be very, very aware of is, I was kind of talking about this too, is the placement of the PA within the room. A lot of times they get this very wrong, where the main speakers for the audience aren't pointing at the audience, or the room is set up in a way where there is no way that'll ever happen. So if you're getting bad sound, these are just things that I'll watch 10 people talk about why the sound is bad somewhere, and I'll be like, wow, the most glaring thing is that the room is not built for this, or you're kind of like putting a square peg in around holes. Where the sound person is in the room, that's a big deal too. It's crazy to me that if you're out playing on stage and there's all these people out there listening, that the sound guy is right there. I see it all the time, but once again, as a performer, it's something to be aware of. If it's not sounding good, that might be it. It might not be the equalizer he's or she's using. It might be just they can't hear what's going on. I call this reading the room. If it's a small coffee shop and you're trying to not disturb the other people like you're having an open mic night, it makes sense to only amplify what you need. I see it way too often where they've got this PA, so they have to plug everything in, and so now the guitar is turned up, so now the vocals have to get turned up. Now the vocals are turned up. Now we're getting feedback. Now all the people are talking louder. As they talk louder, it feeds back into the microphone, and it just goes round and round until all the patrons are gone. And this, I see this so often. So like when you're doing sound or it's your sound, just kind of be aware of it. Like, this guitar is already loud in the room. Do we need to put that through the PA? And there's smaller rooms like at C&P and Couth where like you almost don't need amplification. And if you do, it's just like a little bit on the voice. But I've seen it there where suddenly everything's plugged in and now people are complaining. So that's a biggie. Like I said before, not every place has the same PA too. Like when I run sound, everyone assumes you've got 4 monitors and 2 PA speakers and 1,000 channels. A lot of these places, they're just trying to have one person sing. So just kind of being aware of it. Not every place has this or that. Let's see. Another little tip: when you see 2 monitors on stage, that doesn't always mean that they're playing different things. That's another thing, because a lot of sound people will put all sorts of monitors on stage. So the performers think, wow, they can give me my mix there. A lot of times that's not the case. There's just more monitors. So be very aware of that. I've watched people do this back and forth about that. I'm just like, someone needs to go tell them, because the sound person isn't making this clear that it's not going to change. People have asked me, like, how do I know what I sound like, what I don't sound like? How do I scout out the venue? Well, you know, this is kind of like being nice anyways, but get there before you play. If people are playing before you, check out what they sound like. If you're seeing some problems, you can kind of already get a good idea of what you might need to ask the sound person to change, or what you might be up against. So yeah, just kind of scouting out. Maybe as the person comes off the stage, hey, nice set. How did it sound up there? Sometimes you're like, make sure to tell the sound person. It's nice to get that little tidbit before you're going through your set. So scouting out the venue, even a day before sometimes is a good thing to do, or just arriving before you play and seeing what's going on. A good tip that I've found, and this is more for like a performance thing, is when you're there, in order so you're not just like, okay, next up, grab guitar, run up, and then play. If it's possible, put on your guitar. If it's possible to do this, I'm just making an example of myself. Don't like stand in front of the stage. Go somewhere else in the venue and start warming up. It might sound like obvious, but ever since I started doing it, it really helps me so that my guitar's already on, my hands are on the instrument. Just the natural acoustics of the room are starting to feed that computer up there, and we all process this stuff. We all, when you get to a room, know it or not, you're kind of like figuring out how it's going to be and how it's not going to be, so that when you go up on stage, you're not strapping on that instrument and going into it. So I call that getting your stage legs instead of sea legs. Here's another one. Is what I hear on stage anything close to what the audience is hearing? God. Sometimes I just don't know. So to reiterate, the mains are for the audience if they have them, and the monitors, if they have them, are for you as the performer. So when the sound person says, how's it sounding? They're asking you as the performer, how do your monitors sound? So unless the sound person just does what they're doing, you tell them everything you need to know, or what they need to know. Turn my guitar down in the monitors, turn my vocal up. They're not asking you how it sounds up there. Even I got this wrong until kind of recently. They're asking how it sounds up there. And then at that point, you kind of have to trust that it sounds good up there. Now, do we? Do most people trust? No. You're up there, you're nervous, especially if your monitors sound wonky, you're just assuming the worst. So there's a reason, and I didn't think about this a lot, what to say. There's a reason that it's like that hokey old thing. How's it sound out there? How's it sound out there? Like we've heard that so much that we think that it's just like a thing you say, but that came from them literally saying, hey, anyone who cares to comment, tell me how it sounds. And I feel like it creates an opportunity to kind of talk with the audience. Like it doesn't, especially in a smaller venue, it's so weird when people are like, I'm playing that. Like, okay, like you can ask how it sounds after the first song, like, so just communication is like a big part. And we forget this when we're nervous and on stage, but that is like, if you can't trust the crowd or you don't feel like saying, hey, how's it sound out there? If you've got a trusted friend out there, you can kind of have like the back and forth with them, and they can be like, but that's the best you can do. So I'll kind of go through this real quick. I kind of touched on a lot of this, how to deal with the sound person, what not to say, and what to say. Don't yell at them from the stage. And I already said that. Learn their name, they're a human being, they'll treat you so much better. You show up the last minute, right as you walk on stage, here's my wireless mic, plug it in. They're gonna do it. You're getting bad. But people do this all the time. It's just, you're not Axl Rose. And if you were, who cares? Let's see, just basic respect. The sound person, they can only work what you give them. And sound person thing too. Once again, talking about smaller venues, a lot of people think these people are paid at all, and that they're trained at all. And just to I gotta put it out there, be aware of if you're playing a coffee shop and it's the owner running the sound and they've just started doing this, to not expect that they're gonna have 7 monitors, and just kind of learn to be a pro and just go on with the show. In fact, I watched you do that very well. Recently, you were so patient with the sound guy. So
you were there. Oh my God.
He just, I'll play as long as you need. You're like the sound guy's best friend.
That's very humiliating.
Sound guy. You just said sound
Oh, I
guy.
did.
Twice.
Well, I got some learning to do, apparently. So yeah, so much is the same. And that's why I'm trying to say it. Don't do what I do. Yeah, I'm just reading through my notes here. Yeah. Once again, with the sound person, special needs, please tell them beforehand. They probably have 7 other people with special needs, and maybe they're also like serving drinks on the side. So like right before you go up, isn't the time to ask or to tell them. It's just sounds like common sense. It happens all the time. Just that sort of stuff. A little bit of empathy too. Like one thing is if it's taking really, really long to get set up, and it's your fault or not, and that sound person is really, really like stressing you out, it's an option to say, I can cut a song. If we're really short on time, I get it. I can cut a song. That might be all of it. So there are options. When you're rushing, it's like, do I need to play 8 songs? Well, not with bad sound. So it's okay to take a deep breath and say, I need more time. And if they're like, you don't have more time, be like, I'll cut a song. I mean, that really shouldn't be happening, but it does. Another thing, say you've done everything perfect as a sound person or the audience person. You've done all of this, and it's just not getting better. There's people waiting, and the sound person's not making it better. Sometimes it's time for the show to go on. I feel like that's part of being professional, is being able to handle that. I feel like most people in the room already know that, but I've watched people hold up the whole night to just put this poor sound person through, I don't know what, they're getting this plugged in, they're doing that, and it's just like everyone in the room's like, just play, or don't. If you're having that moment where everyone's waiting, they are, just play, and you'll get it better next time. Yeah, and kind of like I said before, big tip, learn that sound person's name, so that on stage you got direct access to them. Not everyone does. PA basics. So now we're past, now we're actually starting to talk about the PA. So I wanted to talk a little bit about and do a little show and tell microphones. This is a microphone. This is also a microphone. This is also a microphone. The point being is that they don't all look like this, and they all don't function like this. Without getting crazy, mics can look identical and function very different. So if you say, how do they function differently? Aren't they all microphones? Yes, they are all microphones. They all pick up sound. But for example, this microphone has an on-off switch. Not all of them have. You can't assume they do or don't. This one is also, it does not require phantom power. So you can just plug this right in. And there's something that's very important about microphones called pickup patterns. And what that is this microphone isn't picking up sound equally from everyone. Like most microphones, as I get closer to it, talk, 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 it gets louder. But this microphone also is something they call cardioid. Someone threw out that. Points forgotten.
Oh, that means good
what
story.
it means is that it's way more sensitive to anything coming at it from the front. So if you're singing into it, this microphone's built to pick up from here, and from here, but to reject from here. And the reason why is in a perfect or in a great setup, you're singing, your monitor is pointing up right into the spot the mic's not picking up. Beautiful. Designed so well. Never happens. See, this is the big one. This is the big one that's always happening, is that they're not aware of that. So, but also a lot of mics, for example, that's this mic. This microphone does need phantom power. So you do need power from the board. And it sounds really bright and it's very sensitive. But this particular one picks up pretty much from everywhere. It still has the distance thing, but if I'm talking here and flip it here and talking, it's going to pick up the same way. It's just good to be aware that something like this typically isn't good on stage. I see them on stage all the time. So just be aware that there are dead spots purposefully in microphones. And there's certain mics too that are very sensitive, like as soon as you get off of them, they don't pick you up at all. So there's a whole gamut. Like for example, this is the one you see everywhere, the SM58. This is a lot like this. Everything I said about this one's true, except this doesn't have an on-off knob. You see this mic around a lot, the SM57. Same mic except for this part. You wouldn't know it's the same mic. For example, a mic like this is cool because it picks up from this side, but the way, instead of it picking up from just one side or picking up all around it, it's very focused on what's directly ahead of it, and then it blocks out very much of what's kind of behind it and off the side, but then what's coming from right behind it, it picks up a little bit of. You might say, why would I need that? Well, if you're singing in this and you have 2 monitors, like some famous person, now those monitors are in these 2 dead spots in the mic, and that's perfect. But my point being is that they're all different, and if you get the right mic for the right application, that's half the problem. I mean, sometimes I just see the mics people are using or not using, and just, oh god. Another type of mic, also a microphone. This clips onto a drum, so you can get it close, and it's also built to where you can literally hit this with a hammer and it would be okay. Something like this is a lot like this guy, except for this picks up bass, like low frequencies, really well. But I wouldn't advise singing through it because it'll sound like you're singing to like a sock or something. It would then need equalization to sound good. But my point being, there's all these different type of mics. Here's a cool one made for a shotgun shell. This needs phantom power. It's stereo, so it picks up left and right. It actually sucks, but I just thought. Everyone wants, I'm joking. I kind of already went to the iBoxes. They don't all look the same. Some of them need power, some of them don't. Mixers, channels, faders, we kind of covered all that. Another thing that I didn't really mention is we've talked about almost every element of the PA other than amplifiers. So in order to get the sound to be amplified, you need a speaker, obviously. You need some sort of microphone, and then you generally need some sort of mixing board to connect it all together, like I said, control it. But it's never going to get louder to come out the speakers without an amplifier. So I just want to point that out, that this is part of the PA system. In David's system, I want to say the amplifier is built into the mixing board. So it's part of it. With this mixing board, no amplifier. So when I was running sound with this, I had to have this big rack-mounted power amp that this would plug into to go to the speakers. And same thing with the monitors, unless those have a built-in amplifier. Like this is kind of a monitor that has a built-in amp. The monitor, some monitors need power too.
The speakers work as amplifiers?
Yes, they have an amplifier built into it.
Yeah. And sometimes if what you're asking is, can you use that power for another speaker too? Sometimes you can, yeah. But there's all sorts of stuff. And the reason I bring this up is sometimes people put together a PA system and I show up and there's no amplifier. Because it's just not a sexy thing people talk about. They talk about mixing boards and speakers all day, but it's something that needs to amplify it, like physically take the electricity and gain it up. Oh, there's that word, it's gaining it up. So yeah, that's kind of a component too. I kind of also mentioned, as a performer and as a PA person, power on stage. People totally forget about this. Like that, you need outlets. Like it's happened so many times where someone shows up, there's no outlet, or one outlet, or the outlet's really bad, noisy power. Because that can happen if you're in an old building. Everything you plug into it has noise coming through the system. So yeah, power is something to always consider, especially if you're bringing gear. Like when I bring this has a rechargeable battery, so that I don't need their power. But if you were to bring a pedal board, that's something to put on your checklist. Like ask about the power, bring an extension cable, yada yada. Yeah, if it's important, have a backup for it too. Like when it's a big important gig, bring 2 mics, that sort of stuff. Let's see. So this is a big one that I feel like I've been kind of leading up to, is like microphones. I was talking about how they have what they would call different directionality or different pickup patterns. Like this microphone is sensitive to this, but it's not sensitive to this. Well, speakers also work in a similar way, where if it's pointed at you, you're going to hear it differently than if it's pointed slightly. Some speakers don't matter too much, but some speakers matter a lot. And this is like the number one that I see people messing up is on a speaker like this, to get the most out of it, it needs to be pointed right at your ears. I see it all the time where there's people right there and the speaker's all pointed here. I see it all the time where someone's on stage screaming at me or the person that they're not hearing their monitor's right there. It sounds so dumb. This like, you get up, you get nervous, you're not thinking about this. Like a lot of times you want to be able to look right into the monitor to get the best sound. If you're even off like 10 degrees sometimes, that can be like a huge amount of sound. And they don't really talk about that much. And then the other thing, and this is kind of getting towards the feedback thing, is that when this is like when you start having this speaker that has a very focused point that it's shooting its sound out, and this microphone having a very focused point that's picking up, you can only imagine that there's so many different combinations between you do that, your feedback's going to be really bad, versus if you do this, it's going to be way less. So this positioning and understanding of, they call it the dispersion and the pickup pattern of the mic, is something that you can use it to your advantage to get really good sound on stage, and you can have bleed, and you can have all these bad things, and using the right mic in the right place, like cardioid mic, monitor going right up here, speakers not behind me, in front of you, which that can be done too. If you don't have monitors, sometimes you gotta put it behind you. This is like the big one. Like if you're on stage and it's feeding back, most of the time it's because the mic has drifted into the monitor. I see it all the time where, say you're playing, you're playing here, and they're micing you, like with an acoustic guitar, right? You're singing, you're playing to the monitor, and then I'm watching the mic start doing this, and sooner or later, and that's it almost every time. So if you're on stage and you just start hearing squealing, there's a good chance it's something like that. Like a microphone is now kind of pointing into a speaker, or it was pointing and then it got closer. In doing live sound for heavy metal guys, this happens so much. Monitor's right there. Turn me up, I can't hear me, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, oh, and just turn them all the way down. And I see this happen too at a lot of venues too, is this feedback happening, performer doesn't know why, or performer sometimes grabbing the mic and moving right into a speaker. The other day I was at a festival and I saw, while the sound person was doing something, I watched the host person take a mic off stage and start setting it up right here, and I was like, oh God, oh God. It turned out okay, but it was just like, wow, how is this even happening? But it's just because the knowledge isn't out there. So that interaction between the microphone and the speakers are big. It's really big.
Now that you've gotten to this point where you're at and you have this level of information, are you ever able to just turn it off?
No.
Like sit there. So it's a double-edged sword accumulating all this.
My poor girlfriend, every show we play. How was it? Do you really want to know? It's always about the sound. But how we play? Oh, that was fine. Unless it's because I couldn't hear enough of my voice. Then, that damn sound person. And I'm a mastering engineer too. So my real job is being the pickiest of all the engineers. So I go out. And live sound people, even when they're good, they're not the pickiest people. So the whole time I'm just like, deep breath. But what I do is kind of the other thing I was trying to teach you is just kind of that callousness and trying to learn resilience to that. It's like learning to be able to be a pro, being able to just turn it off enough to get through the show and smile and all that stuff. So we've talked about the angles. Like if it's not pointing right at you, you're not going to hear it very well. And if the microphone is pointing right into the speaker, it's going to feedback. Like that's the simplest way to kind of put it. But then also there's certain mics that are designed for certain scenarios to really get around. So let's talk about feedback, because that, to me, that's like one of the big ones. And so much of what causes it and how to understand it also kind of helps you understand all of this. So let's talk about what causes it and how to avoid it, right? So the main causes, and it's any of these, it's not always one thing, is some sort of mic and speaker interaction. That either the mic has moved closer, changed angles, the monitors changed angles. The other thing I haven't really talked about is if everything's fine and then they start turning up the volume or the gain on the mic, it could be the sound person. You might be fine and then at some point they're like, man, this is rocking. They turn it up a bit and now you're like, what happened? And what's even worse is it might be feeding back in your monitors, but not for the audience. That happened at our show recently. The whole set, her guitar was going ooh through our monitors, and I kept saying to the sound person, "That's her guitar. That's her guitar." And there it is. And I think you probably couldn't hear it. I probably should have said, "Hey, Brett." Instead of his name, but I learned his name. The monitors are feeding back, and I'm pretty sure it's her guitar. But once again, self-preparation. I built this box so that Brett doesn't need to be as smart as Another thing, and it's kind of the same thing, is if there's a microphone that's being touched or handled or bumped or sitting on a rattling thing, it's kind of the same idea. Is now this mic is getting really excited and all this information is going into it. It's trying to go in the speakers, and a lot of times it doesn't sound like, "Hi, I'm a voice and you can hear me." It sounds like, and that's going through the PA. So my advice with that is, one is like if you notice that the mic is now against your cheek or on your guitar, that's going to cause feedback. Like it's not good anyways, but that could do it, is what I would call that proximity to the mic. Like everything could be great, and then you start touching it. Another thing with this proximity thing is that, I was saying this mic is cardioid and only picks to full inside. As soon as you do the heavy metal thing like that, it's now omnidirectional. You've changed the mechanics of the mic where now it's picking up from everywhere. So when you're leaning over that monitor, letting it go, and then you cup the mic like that, now you basically turned the mic down too. And this would happen all the time, so that handling of the mic could be a thing. What I would call coupling, it's sitting on something that's rattling. That causes feedback and stuff. Here's a big one, and this happens way too much. And this is kind of talking about the gain. Is on a mixing board, when you plug the microphone in, typically, you have multiple chances to turn up the volume or turn it down. Typically, the first one is the knob at the top. It's called the mic preamp, and it's normally labeled gain. And the idea is that you turn this up as much as you need to, and then that feeds a healthy amount of what they call signal or audio to the rest of the mixing board. Now, without going depth, you also have this thing called a master fader. They almost all have it. And this is like the last stop that all the audio, after it's been mixed and equalized and it's going out to your mains, this is like another way to adjust the volume. Now, what this exists for in my brain, and I've been doing this a while, but once again, everyone has a different opinion, is there's this thing called unity. There's normally a little dot right there, and it exists because you should leave it there. What you're doing is you're kind of saying, yeah, let it all through, let all this stuff through, and the only reason that you would change it is because someone says, everything sounds great, can you turn it down a little bit? Sure. Everything sounds great, can you turn it all up a little bit? Sure. Or back in the day, or like say you're in a huge venue and you're doing a fade down. I say back in the day because I've never seen someone at a live show ride the fader down. Plus then you just hear the drum set go playing. But that's what it was invented for, is to be able to ride it. This is what I see so much, and it drives me batty. The master fader is sitting like right there, really low. And so guess what? And I don't know why they did that. Then they've turned all of these up, all of the way, which now that's gain. Now that has become a guitar amp. Like now we're back to that guitar amp distortion where you've got your guitar amp example where you have level, which is how loud it's going to be, and then gain, which is like how much extra louder do you want. I'm sorry if that's not making sense, but anyways, if this master fader is sitting really low, that means they're having to turn everything else up tons, and that creates distortion, and distortion creates feedback. I see this so often where I walk into a venue, master fader at 0, everything up here on loud. You can just tell the PA is just ready, like it's sounding distorted. And normally if I were to walk over and explain it to the person, there's just, starting there, it's like I'm gonna have to rewire the whole PA and rework it, but that is just like, if you're doing that or you see it, I just want people to be aware of that. If you're running sound and you think that you want to have that master fader low, there's literally no reason to do it. You would only want that up so that you can keep everything else as low as possible. That's how you avoid feedback, hiss. That's what they call proper gain staging, because each knob affects gain, which is electronic volume. So gain staging would be like, how much volume do you turn up here if that volume is feeding into this volume, and that volume is feeding into this volume. So big thing is that master fader, it should be up. And if you're at a venue, like as the musician who never runs sound or whatever, and you see that, not that you can like go over there and just tell them, hey, I heard that that's bad and here's why, but when you start getting feedback, this is a thing. I see it all the time. And maybe if you got the chutzpah, do say something like, why is the master fader? They'll probably say something like, I'm supposed to keep it quiet in here. which like I get why they would want to do that, but that is just such the wrong way to do it, because now it's louder because it's feeding back and distorting and all that stuff. So that's a big deal. All other things being equal, if there's distortion being created in the mixing board, it's going to make feedback way worse. And I see this everywhere.
Going back to your definition of distortion is anything altering the sound. So could that be frequency as well? Too
Yeah.
high, too low?
Anything.
So,
And you led me right into the next thing, is the other thing that causes feedbacks are bursts of frequencies or certain frequencies. If, like harmonica is a great example. You might do a sound check and they give you the right level, but harmonicas and certain other instruments have these bursts of frequencies that can just kind of send the PA. It's almost like for that moment, someone just shoved the mic right up to the speaker and turned the volume all the way up for that second. So some of it is, I don't really have to answer with harmonica, it's just that the sound person's aware of that. Another thing that will cause, kind of in the same way but different, is when you're using an equalizer at all. Like when you're boosting, say you're boosting highs, boosting lows, or boosting mids. Equalizers can just cause feedback at low. I'm not saying don't use EQ, but sometimes if you're doing everything else great and then you've got your mid-range turned up almost all the way, that kind of makes the mixing board ready to what they call oscillate. It's basically whatever frequency you turned up, it's now really weighting the feedback of that frequency. So that's another reason for another kind of pet peeve is when I walk into mixing boards, especially after I got really bad sound and I look at the EQ and everything is up. So obviously they knew exactly what they were doing. And obviously their gain staging was great. And it's just like, that's a big feedback thing. So with EQ, my favorite position for that is off. But seriously, it's off and do everything else right first, instead of just grabbing controls, because that's another thing that is done wrong a lot, is people EQ do weird things with their EQ. So to me, it makes more sense to cut out stuff that doesn't belong there, rather than add a bunch of something that's not there, for feedbacks. Mic choice, yeah, that's back to feedback too. Switching to a different mic that has the right pickup pattern for your monitors and all that, get rid of feedback in there. It's just like wrong mic in the wrong place next to the wrong monitor, it's going to be feedback all day. Right mic, same place, same monitor, better. So that's a big part of it. So let's see, I kind of said the less is more approach. If you're running sound, just to me, if you're turning on more stuff and adding more stuff, and it makes more sense to get the basics right. It's exciting to buy new gear and to turn knobs, but this is when I unmess up people's systems, it's so much of, why is that plugged? What? Why is that turned all the way up? What? So, and then I take all of that off and we get a pile of extra gear and it sounds much better. So less can be more. Another thing to be aware of as a sound person and as a performer, have you ever heard the buzzing? Like you plug in your guitar, it buzzes, or something's just buzzing. 9 times out of 10, what's happening is if you have, I'm trying to find a guitar cable, which isn't that well protected against what they call EMF or like buzzing. And if you run anything that has power, like even the speaker cable, like because this is powered by the amplifier, this has power in it. The cable that plugs in the wall, that has power on it. If those run side by side with audio cables, it can put noise from the power into the audio. So on stage, what I try to do is anytime that there's a power line, you kind of want to go over as opposed to wrapping together. I see this so often where someone shows up, look how efficient my rig is. All of the power's like just braided around the audio, and like, wow, that's gonna you're just asking for zzz through your speakers all day. And I know that a lot of us are probably seeing that. Sometimes it's nothing you can do. Like you get on stage and then you look at the thousands of cables that have been laid out. If you're not fixing that in a 5-minute sound check, but I guess someone put out a question where the sound person says, that buzzing is you, that buzzing is you. A lot of times it's not. I just kind of wanted to put that in there. It might be. Once again, if every time they play a show, they say your guitar buzzes, it's probably your guitar. But if it's always fine at home, and it's always fine, and then someplace the sound person's like, oh, it's your guitar. It's them covering up for that mistake. Is that someone ran audio and power side by side, or even worse, just looped them endlessly and put them in a bin or something. The 3 things, or I guess 6 things I just wanted to make sure that you got out of this. And if you didn't, reach out to me because I want to make sure you got it. Is as a performer, the big 3 are self-preparation. Like if you have prepared, like these things happen over and over and over again, do something about it. Bring something that, or ask them about. So it's just like preparation. This happens so often where someone's like, this always happens. Well, you're trying to keep but for some reason they feel like there's nothing to do. But yeah, you can bring your own mic, you can bring your phone, so prep. The other thing, communication with the sound person. Learn their name, treat them like a human being, realize that they're probably not paid at all to be there, and if you make their day a little, they're gonna meet you halfway and communicate early, and I would say often to some people, so I would say often with those people. And then once as a performer, I hope you remember this microphone and speaker thing, this understanding that with feedback and hearing yourself, that if they're not pointing in your ear, you're not going to hear it very well. If you're not singing in the mic, you're not hearing it very well. I see people do this at live performances all the time. They just start creeping off their vocal mic. And I don't know why that happens, but dude, or dudette, or a sound person, just like maintain a distance. That people work that mic. There's a reason that people do this and all. They don't just sit over here. That makes you. So yeah, that mic and monitor placing, like even in a rock band, classic thing, guitar player brings their huge stack on stage, stands over here and says they can't hear the guitar. It's like, well, first of all, you should. It's loud, but you're not pointing it at it. Like it's so simple. And if the sound person isn't pointing your monitor at you, sometimes you just angle it a little bit towards you. That'll make all the difference. And then the 3 big ones when it comes to running sound is the last thing that I just said. I can't say it enough. Is microphone and monitor interaction. It's just, I have yet to see it done right as much as I'd like. Microphones sitting right by speakers, microphones pointing down into monitors. A massive thing, I can't believe I skipped this, is when you have 7 microphones on stage. Muting, like turning off those microphones if you're not using them. This happens so much, and I feel like most of the time when you're getting feedback on stage and you're kind of communicating to the sound person like, what is it? Is it me? And they're going, I don't know. I'd put some money on there's a microphone on stage that the last group had that is now sitting on a monitor or just sitting there in the air. And I guess if you're not in front of the board, you can't mute them, but it's worth being aware of as a performer. You can say that to the sound person, hey, any chance there's some mics that are open or any mics that you didn't mute? There's a nice way to say that, but I see this so much. And if you're running sound too, I know it's annoying to have to do things and whatnot. That's when I was doing sound, I prided myself on it. It's also what broke me is every band would be done, I'd mute them all immediately. No asking, am I good to unplug? It was like, whoop. Any EQ was set right to even, everything was set to this, standards. I knew what I was doing, but in a lot of places, you're getting the mix the last person had. A lot of times these sound people, they adjust for the person before yours monitors. They do as few tweaks as possible, and without you telling them, hey, I'm cool with cutting a song, I need to get this monitor mix right. And then for the engineering thing, or the most advanced thing is kind of what I was talking about with EQ. Less is more. If you're just turning it, it's a turn it, no. When you boost up low frequencies, you're blasting your speakers out. I see this happen all the time where all the lows are up, and it's just low frequencies within an audio system eat up what they would call tons of heavy. The more bass that you put through your speakers, the more bass you're going, the harder it is to get sound. So if you're equalizing stuff, just leave the bass at home. If you want to take some bass off, cool. But this boosting of everything, especially I'm going to boost the bass. Well, I might as well boost the treble. I'll boost the mid range. No. I'm going to come turn your EQ off. And then just less is more. So, and then my biggest takeaway, and this is the thing that I need to work on, other than the sound person apparently, is just kind of back to that. When I know everything that's going wrong or going right, and it's time to play, just being a pro at it. Because that's another thing I see is the people like me that really know this stuff also can really get in the way, where they kind of want to, let me do it, or let me show you my way. And everyone's like, everyone just wants to play. Like, and it's not your system. Like, think about it. You're not even getting paid to be in this place. You're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. And now someone's going to come like, here, let me drive your car for a second. Like, no. So, yeah. And I'm still working on that. Is being able to go up there and have my stuff together enough to where if that sound is awful, that I can still smile through it. And I've done enough preparation and practice so that I'm kind of impervious to that bad sound. I wish that it didn't come to that, but once again, we're working with venues that aren't making money, that aren't paying their people, with systems that aren't working well, so knowledge is power. If you can kind of protect yourself and help them, that's good. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like this one's super relatable. Acoustic guitar feedback. That is one that I feel that feels very magical to me as far as like, I usually don't have it, but I feel like that's like the worst that
I'll challenge myself with all these answers to be like, it was this.
Yeah.
So with that, and it's easy, bass. If someone's got a bass equalizer turned up and they're miking your acoustic guitar, it's just gonna, think of bass as your tip. There's just all this bass. So the first thing, if you're running sound, is just try cutting the bass down on the guitar, whether it's the guitar itself. The bass really creates feedback.
Okay.
The other thing is that the acoustic guitar itself is a microphone, even though it doesn't have a microphone, or it may not. So as a speaker or other things start vibrating that thing, it's going to start getting excited and start feeding back. So some of that might be like, can you get away from the monitor? Could you turn the bass, just like get the bass down on the guitar? I feel like that's most of it. Usually they make those covers and stuff, but I feel like a lot of people will slap those on before they've even started to look at what's going on.
Okay.
Especially because time, they're like, go. Next.
Question about thinking about sound from a sort of step-by-step approach. When setting up sound, plugging in and bringing up sound, is there like an order of things you want to make sure are in place before you get to the irresistible EQ ads?
Yeah, power. Because I can't count how many times everything's up, literally turn all the way up, and someone's like, oh, I should plug it in. Pop! The whole system makes this loud noise. So make sure your power's working. The other thing too is if you have no power, like, don't even set the PA up. So power first, plug in mic, and then EQ, like EQ last. I mean, the only time I'll touch an EQ first is there's something called a high pass filter that cuts out deep low frequencies. And if you don't need those low frequencies, I turn that on every time. But not really by default. EQ's kind of like the last thing.
I played with the band for a while, and the guitar players, everybody would have the instruments on so loud. Doesn't that make it harder for you to hear your voice?
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes back to like the setting up a PA system in a small room. You know, I was saying how as if you only need to set the PA up to be louder than the loudest thing. So if you have a drummer, like this is the classic thing, the drummer is playing. Well, I can't hear my guitar amp over the drummers. The guitarists and bassists, they turn their amps up. Okay, I can hear myself. And then the singer, normally you're in a small room with very little PA, and you're trying to hear yourself. And guess what's also happening? All of that noise is going back in that microphone and coming back through those speakers. And it just, so what ends up coming through more than anything is drum signals. So that is a very common thing, and in that situation, sometimes there's nothing you can do unless the drummer's willing to play softer.
With the sound guys, should they rely less on having their amps turned up?
Sound person.
I got to do it. Should they be relying more on hearing the mix of their amps through the monitors rather than turning up their amps to hear themselves?
Well, you've stepped in it. Guitarists always want to be loud.
They just want to be loud.
Yeah, they want to be loud, and in order for their amps to sound right, which I get it because I'm one of those guys, you want to turn your amp up to a certain amount to have it sound good. But to me, it keeps coming back to just like positioning. In a perfect practice thing, the guitar would be putting their amps at themselves. The singer would be as far away from the drums as possible with their mic not pointing into the drums.
And the secret is having the guitar amp pointed at the guitarist's ear.
Exactly.
And a lot of them never do.
They never do.
We've had
Never.
the guitarist on the opposite side of his amp before. So
Yeah.
it's just,
And guess what? He can't hear
he
himself.
can't hear himself.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, this is very helpful, and thank you for airing on simplicity. But just quick questions, what would you say about interface, in consideration of everything?
You mean like recording interfaces?
Is that where it would work, not?
Oh, what did interface mean? Is that what you're asking?
I'm just curious, yeah, because I'm kind of thinking of both aspects, so is that correct, interface is only for recording?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's the yes. Yes.
Okay.
Because of course there's plenty of interfaces out there that are mixing consoles that are interfaces. In fact, that's what this is. This is a recording console, but at the same time it can feed all 16 channels into a laptop via FireWire, which I don't think that exists anymore. But so yeah, like when I said interface, I kind of mentioned that because if you're like at home recording, you probably don't have a whole mixing board, and you can't just plug right in the computer. You have some sort of interface, and in that case, all of this pretty much does apply, like the phantom power thing, the adding too much or too little gain thing. But yeah, slightly different, but the same.
Thank you.
Totally. The next one I'd like to do on more recording stuff, because I love live sound, don't get me wrong, but recording, that's even more fun.
Well, as you brought it up,
And so did I preface it good?
yes, I was just wondering, in terms of recording, and if I'm doing a vocal, where do you put the de-esser in the signal chain?
Okay, de-esser, and this is more advancing. A de-esser is a process or a processor that can lower the sibilance. Like when I'm talking, all my S's and T's and all that high frequency stuff, that's sibilance. Sometimes when you record, especially through like a nice microphone up close, you can get an unnatural amount of this sibilance where it just sounds like unnatural. And a de-esser is a processor that can kind of take the S's down. I would say to run that as early in the chain as possible. In fact, with processing in general, like say everything's great, whether you're singing through a PA or whether you're singing through a recording, I found that you apply things as you need them. Which once again is coming back to that lesser more. Say you've recorded your vocal, or they've done a sound check and everything sounds pretty darn good, but that S is sticking out to you. Then the first thing you do is you add the de-esser. And then if now you've added the de-esser, it needs, I don't know, something else, like EQ, then add EQ. I've never really understood when people say, always put this first, and then always put that second, and always do that. Like, there's no always to anything in life. So when I see those, I'm kind of like, eh. So yeah, I would say earlier in the chain, because if you've already processed the vocal and kind of like started manipulating it a whole bunch, then the de-esser, it normally won't work as well. So yeah, early would be my answer.
I hate to be a drag, but if we go over,
Yeah, so how do we end it? Everyone please take a card. Like I said, I know I didn't get to everything. I feel, there's so much left unsaid, but please reach out to me if you think that I didn't get to. I'm going to answer everyone's questions.
I have something to say.
Dated for PA too.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Yeah. I used it like for a second.
If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, and please remember to subscribe to the Fuzzywallz channel. Anything you'd like to add? Feel free to leave a comment. And when that final mix is ready for mastering, Fuzzywallz is standing by.